To the PAC Talk conference call. My name's Levi, and I am a state national of the state of Virginia, and I've gone through the entire process with the help of People's Awareness Coalition, the process that we will be going over tonight. If you don't know what I mean by the process, then you will by the end of this call. So just first, before we get real down into the get our elbows down into the dirt, we're gonna go over some introductory stuff about PAC. So when we say PAC, we're talking about People's Awareness Coalition. PAC was founded in 1998 by L.B. Bork, who then released the book The Red Amendment in the year 2000. The Red Amendment is the book that we recommend everybody gets a copy of this book that wants to sort of get up to speed on what it is we're talking about. But not having a book for this presentation is just fine, because this is introductory level information that we're going to be going over. People's Awareness Coalition, more specifically, means everyone in America gaining political and constitutional understanding and then working together. People's Awareness Coalition, sort of what it all means there. So a little bit about our philosophy is that first and foremost, we're about gathering information and sharing information amongst each other. PAC's mission is to be an educational tool to get Americans up to speed on the current condition of the government in order to identify the problems and, more importantly, the remedy. And our next core philosophy is nonviolence. It's our belief that wars and rebellions are the two most destructive diseases of society, and so we aim our methodology is administrative, so it doesn't have anything to do with confrontation and violence or property destruction or anything like that. The next core philosophy would be cooperation. We believe it's extremely important to stay connected with other members and also to be connected in your local community and your family. And finally, the main core philosophy is purpose. We identify and correct the fundamental problem plaguing America for the last century, the last century and a half, in order to restore the Republican governmental system as prescribed by the Constitution. So we will, as we go through this presentation, certain of these questions will be answered. Some of the questions include, how many of you would like to better understand why things are the way they are? Why does it seem like they just make up the rules as they go? And I mean they with the old quotation marks. And why are so many people afraid of the government, and so on? How many of you would like to feel more secure? I think that everybody here probably has thought these questions at some point, but it's our goal in this call to get you a step closer to answering these questions for yourself. We'll provide some of the information and the tools you'll need to achieve your lawful remedy. And finally, knowledge is power. So where to begin? Where to begin? The first thing we need to do is realize that terminology in laws is often different than it is used in regular speech in every day, especially when you're talking about laws that are very old. So when we look at laws and we want to interpret them and understand them impeccably understand them, then we need to become familiar with the usage of the terms. Okay, so some of the terms include but aren't limited to citizen, status, power, rights. Then we'll go over the difference between rights and privileges, the difference between legal and lawful, and so on. So throughout this presentation, we're going to basically be analyzing some key definitions. Then we're going to be looking at exactly how that all fits together, so that you can really see exactly why things are the way they are, and then how to fix them, lastly. So the first definition that we're going to look at is status, and this is the most important definition when it comes to the People's Awareness Coalition, because this is the focus of our efforts. We will be changing or helping to change people's status, or helping them to change their status. And what I mean by status is exactly the condition of a person or thing in the eyes of the law. That is one of the many definitions of status. And some examples would be a child or a parent, married or unmarried, servant or master, living or dead. These are all statuses that a person can have. And then finally, we're going to go into citizenship status, because the citizenship status is the fulcrum or the crux of the problem. And so as we get on, we will see exactly why that is. First, we're going to go into exactly what we mean by citizen. I'll explain a little bit of that, and then we'll move on from there. So what we mean exactly by a citizen. A citizen is a person who owes allegiance to a government and is protected by it. That's how Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines a citizen. Okay, so you owe allegiance to a government. You owe allegiance to a higher group. Okay, to the body politic. So here's a famous quote that many will probably recognize, and it goes, "Government of the people, by the people, and for the people." That was Abraham Lincoln that said that at the Gettysburg Address. So why do I bring that up? Well, government of the people, by the people, for the people, it implies the government that we have here is made up of citizens, right? And it's presumed that these citizens are working for other citizens. And that for this reason, it's our belief in this group that the citizen bears responsibility for the actions of the government. After all, they are part of what constitutes the government, and by their contributions and acquiescence, they empower the systems that form. By taking this principle into account, we have determined that invoking the inherent right to remove oneself from an objective system is the single most effective way of disempowering. That's right, you can remove yourself from a system if you object to the direction or the moral direction, I guess, the moral direction of that system. That would be the best way, the least violent way, the least provocative way, I suppose, of disempowering the system. But what we mean by disempowering is not the extreme of doing away with it entirely in sort of an anarchistic sort of point of view. That's not what we're about at all. We're not anarchists at all. We believe in the rule of law, but we also believe in limited federal government, limited central government. So as we move on, we're going to now take a look at power, exactly, where power and legitimate power more specifically. But first, let's take a look at power. Power meaning the legal or official authority, capacity, or right. Okay, possession of control, authority, or influence over others. So this is the way we want to view power in this context. So the example that I like to bring up is that a parent should have power over the child, not the child having power over the parent. This would be an example of the correct way that power is supposed to flow, or the best way that power structures itself naturally. So this actually brings me also to a point that of an ancient maxim of common law that's very popular and well understood, and that is that the creation can never be more powerful than the creator. This is sort of a rule of thumb when it comes to the law and how the law is written. These maxims are often taken into consideration when you're talking about a de jure system of government. Now, a little bit more about power, and more specifically legitimate power. Where does a government's legitimate power come from? Well, as we kind of talked about when we were talking about citizen, the power comes from allegiance, or it comes from consent. Okay, so governments derive their just power from the consent of the governed. That's a quote that's taken from the Declaration of Independence. So if we sort of take that into consideration, keep that in the back of your mind, then you're going to see that you can legitimately and lawfully remove yourself from an objectionable system. That would be what we also call revoking consent, removing consent, and other synonymous terms. So consent. So now we'll move on and we'll look at the way that power sort of structures itself in a natural way. Like I used the example of the parent and the child. the parent should have power over the child in the sense that the parent knows best and wants the best thing for the child, not in a sort of despotic, spiteful way of having power over somebody. This is what's known as the order of nature, and the law regards the order of nature. What we mean exactly by the order of nature is just the physical universe considered as an orderly system subject to natural laws, such as the parent having power over the child, because obviously the child comes into the world completely naive and unable to take care of itself. The parent takes care of the child, hands down knowledge and wisdom, and then hopefully, if they've done a great job, then the child will eventually end up taking care of the parent. So what is the true order of nature? As we move on, we'll see the order of nature as it applies to the American governmental system or the American political system. So before the Constitution was written in ancient law, ancient civilizations, or in common law, ancient civilizations considered the following to be the true order of nature. And that would be that God is at the highest rung of power. God then cedes some of his power or its power to individuals. The creator endows the creation, so to speak, with inalienable rights. And then those groups through free association, or those individuals through free association, then form groups. And so you can see that God is at the highest rung, and then individuals, and then those individuals form groups. And those groups are only legitimate if they are formed through consent. And then lastly, in this example, we have the federal government, because actually the federal government is a group of groups. All those states combined in a mutual benefit and for protection, they formed the United States federal government. This system is known as individualism. This is an example of a system of individualism where the rights and happiness of individuals are considered more important than the collective, and it's also assumed that that individuals will do what's best for themselves. If they happen to come into a hard disagreement with the things that are going on in the group, then they're free to leave. So all these concepts that we've sort of gone over so far are what add up to your rights and the ability to assert your rights. Because, like I said, you can remove your consent or you can remove your allegiance from a system that seems to be objectionable to your moral code, right? And so further to reinforce this idea, we have another Declaration of Independence quote. And it goes, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." So this is a very important and foundational idea and principle that the Republic was built on. And one of the most important terms in this quote here is the word unalienable or unalienable. Okay, so what does it mean exactly? Well, what it means is it's an attribute that's given by a higher power that cannot be taken away by somebody that is your equal. So your peer cannot take this from you. A government that's of men cannot take this from you. It can't be taken or given up permanently. So what exactly changed? If we have unalienable rights, what exactly changed? Well, if we look at things logically, we can tell that, we do have these rights that have been bestowed upon us that can't be taken away or given up permanently. So what exactly would have to happen for these rights to be infringed upon? They would have to be not protected, right? So in essence, you can give them up voluntarily by not protecting them. But they're always there waiting for you to wake up. And so how is it that they were given up voluntarily? How is it that people have been tricked into giving something up that's so valuable and so essential to the core of being human? How did that happen exactly? Well, that's where we start to talk about the 14th Amendment, which is the main focus and the subject of the book, The Red Amendment, as I mentioned earlier in the call. The book, The Red Amendment, goes over this in detail, but I'll touch on it a little bit now. The 14th Amendment's complex language created for the first time a status called citizen of the United States. Prior to this, all individuals were members of their state. So let's rewind a little bit and back to where I was talking about the parent and the child. The parent should have power over the child, right? And the maxim of common law that kind of ties into is the creation can never be more powerful than the creator. If we sort of that idea into account, and then we look at this statement again, 14th Amendment's complex language created for the first time a status called citizen of the United States. Okay, so again, the 14th Amendment's language created a status called citizen of the United States. All right, so that is the creation of the federal government. And so then the federal government then went about imposing this, or sort of putting this status on everybody that was born in any of the states from that point on, from the inception of the 14th Amendment. That was in 1868. So from that point on, everybody is then under the creation of the federal government by having the status, by going into that status and using it voluntarily, because they do have the opportunity to throw that off. And also, within the language of the 14th Amendment, a dual citizenship is created. So you are, first and foremost, paramount citizenship status lies in the United States, and then secondarily with the state. Okay, so before this, there was no citizenship status to the United States, and your citizenship status was only with the state. So your primary allegiance was to the state. Okay, this is why the states had some power at that time. So furthermore, about the 14th Amendment, the phrase privileges and immunities that can be found in the amendment is opposed to rights, and I'll tell you why. Privileges and immunities allow the government to change, suspend, or ignore these attributes at any time. So the privileges and immunities clause in the 14th Amendment, all it does is sort of mimic the idea of these de jure rights, or these unalienable rights that were given to you by the Creator. Okay, so the privileges and immunities, they just mimic what is the real de jure rights that are waiting for you. So a little bit more to reinforce this point, we're going to look at a definition of privilege from an encyclopedia, West's Encyclopedia of American Law to be exact. A privilege is a particular benefit, advantage, or immunity enjoyed by a person or class of people that is not shared with others, a power of exemption against or beyond the law. It is not a right. Rather, it exempts one from the performance of a duty, obligation, or liability. So what it does is it gives you it gives you freedom from responsibility, because it says right there it exempts one from a performance of a duty, obligation, or liability. It's also not a right, as it specifically says right before that. So this amendment ignores the order of nature known as government de jure, and it replaces it with man's law known as government de facto. We'll go into a little bit of the difference between de jure and de facto now. This would the terms de jure and de facto are sort of synonymous with the terms lawful and legal. This is a confusing point for a lot of people, because they don't really, many people haven't taken the time to understand what's the difference between something that's lawful and something that's legal. So what is something that's lawful? An example of something that's lawful is something that's in accordance with the law of the land, such as a birthright, being born to a certain area geographically, and having ancestry that has been in that area, thereby giving you the ability to claim that area, and in the sense that you will have allegiance to the group or the political body that is there, being able to work the land, being able to make your livelihood in that area, and not having the threat of deportation, so to speak, for being displaced from your land. Now, what would be on the other hand is legal. Legal is not necessarily the same thing, and here we will explore that some. Legal means something that is pertaining to the understanding, the exposition, the administration and the science and practice of law. It basically means to follow the letter of what has been written down rather than following the spirit of what is intended to be accomplished by the writing of laws. Okay, so legal looks more to the letter of the law, and lawful looks more to the spirit of the law. Legal is more appropriate for the conformity to positive rules of law, and lawful is more in accord with ethical principle. And lastly, legal imports rather that the forms of law are observed and that the proceedings are correct, that the ritual has gone without any sort of mistakes, that every I is dotted and every T is crossed. Lawful, on the other hand, is more concerned with the right, that the right is actual in substance and that the moral quality is secure. Okay, so this is what we mean when we say de jure or de facto. See, this is the best example, and the best example to point to when you want to see what's de jure and what's de facto is the implementation of the 14th Amendment. Because prior to that, we lived in a lawful, or the people at the time lived in a lawful governmental system. And then after the implementation of the 14th Amendment, people lived within a legal system. Okay? Because the status was given to them, even though they are not technically geographically born in what is known as the United States. What I mean by that is I'm referring to the government of the United States. Okay, because in the territory or the state wherein the person was born would be considered in a lawful sense, that would be considered their homeland or their lawful place of birth. So this is the best example that I can come up with to explain what is lawful versus legal. Okay, so now let's take a look at what is the new legal system, the new order, so to speak, right? That would be the federal government at the top of the highest rung of power, because after all, the federal government created the citizenship status to itself, then gave that citizenship status to all the individuals in all the states. So the federal government now has a direct relationship to all the individuals, which obviously would disempower the states because the states are sort of being hopped over. And so the federal government has the highest rung of power. The groups or states then have the next rung down, and then individuals have the least power in this system. And obviously God is omitted. And so this is what is known as a collectivist system. That is where the group is always considered more important than the happiness and well-being of the individual. Now, a complete totalitarian collectivist system would not allow you to leave, and instead would rather that you died instead of leaving. This system that we have now has not progressed, luckily, to that point, and we do still enjoy the option of leaving voluntarily. That's what we're here for. That's what we're here to learn about. But first, I just wanted to highlight the fact that political power, just to summarize what we've gone over, political power comes from people, from groups of people that share the same status, that have allegiance to the same government, or that have allegiance to the same group, right? So this is why the states seem to have no power, because all the people in all the states are United States citizens. They are not state citizens, or they are not nationals of their state. They don't have a primary allegiance to their state, and so therefore they are not protected by the state. They have no rights, and they have no protection of the Constitution of the state wherein they reside. Instead, they have privileges and immunities that can, again, be changed, ignored, or suspended at any time. So this is the system that we currently live in. This is the legal system that we currently live in. It is not a lawful system. And a lot of people would argue that the 14th Amendment was not passed lawfully, but that doesn't much matter because custom and usage has cemented it in place. So how exactly do we fix the problem? That's obviously the most important question, and that's why we're all here tonight. We are going to talk about that now. The best way to correct the current situation is to bring the power back to the states. This is the way it was intended by the founders. The way that we do that is by correcting your status to that of a state national. This means pledging allegiance to a state, thereby bringing political power back to the states and bringing the federal government back into its intended function. Now, I know probably a lot of people are thinking, how can you declare allegiance to a state? Well, the reason is because the states are actually considered countries in a technical sense. They all have their own constitutions, and they all once did have their own citizenry. And that can be a possibility again. This is the function, or this is the tactic, the administrative tactic that People's Awareness Coalition uses to bring the power back to the states and bring the federal government back into its intended function. The People's Awareness Coalition is here to provide the remedy, but we need your help. We need help to spread the word. We need help to bring people more awareness and get people involved in helping this information go out and also helping others through the process. So that's why I'm here right now. I'm an example of somebody that's gone through the process, and then now I'm volunteering my time to help to spread the message, to help spread the information, and to help explain things to people, and actually be to actually show people that it is possible. I've done it. So it's been the mission of PAC since 1998 to bring proper constitutional education and political awareness to all Americans. But in time, it was realized that most Americans aren't quite ready for one reason or another. Maybe they just aren't ready financially. Maybe they have actually maybe they have come into a position in life when they are actually very dependent on the system, and they aren't able to leave the system for forsaking any benefits that they may be at this time receiving. Okay, because there's another ancient maxim of common law, and that goes, he who bears the benefit ought to also bear the burden. So what that means is by getting Social Security, by getting Medicare, Medicaid, by getting unemployment and all these other benefits that are provided by the overarching system, you are then in a position where you are subject to it, and you don't really have the ability to pick and choose what aspects of the system you want to obey or not. So it's a kind of an all or nothing thing. So that's why one of the main points and one of the main things that we tell people is that if you go through with the process, then you're not going to be accepting these benefits anymore. And it's sort of a you go your way, we'll go ours type of thing. So again, it's been realized that not everybody's just ready to jump straight into doing this process, and that's totally fine because we really understand that this is sort of a complicated thing, and it can cause some anxiety when you think about turning your back on the system that you've been part of for your entire life and that your parents and grandparents have been part of for their entire lives. It sounds really weird when you think about it for the first time. So, I tell everybody, take your time, go through the book, get a copy of the book, The Red Amendment, go through it, consider what you could do if you're not quite ready to go through this process. Consider what you could do to get yourself a step closer. Become in contact with all the other people that are in this group. There are many people that are very active in this group. And it's growing all the time, and I expect that 2018 is going to be a really great year for us because we have a lot of projects that are coming right around the corner that are going to really help us to push this information out to people and get more people involved. But we've realized that not everybody's really ready to just jump right into it, but that's why the PAC Alliance was formed. So PAC Alliance is those people that are in the periphery of the core group that is known as the People's Awareness Coalition. So PAC Alliance are those people that are ready to help and ready to understand all the information and ready to become really involved and sort of start to tie themselves into the community of people of PAC, because we do have a very active community of people that work together on a daily basis to go over information, to do research, and to right now we're working on the structure of the organization and bringing more people in. But the more people that we have that are focused on certain issues and doing research in different directions, the faster that we'll basically get all this stuff pegged. We've got a lot of stuff figured out now but it's always good to have more people helping. So PAC is looking for good people to move this vision forward, and those people who are looking to free America from this deception of the 14th Amendment and to assist those that truly want freedom. So where can you start with getting acquainted with all this stuff? Well, the best way to get acquainted with all this information really is to get yourself a copy of the Red Amendment. I have copies for sale. You can also find them at redamendment.net, and also we have other members that have copies for sale. PAC has released a lot of information that can be found also at pacandlaw.us, and this would be in the form of white papers, which are basically short essays or reports that can tie into the information that can be found in the book, The Red Amendment. This will be sort of supplemental information that will get your mind going in the right direction. And then when you get your copy of the Red Amendment, then you can go back and maybe read these papers again, and you'll really understand exactly where we're coming from. So you can start your educational journey there at pacandlaw.us, and you could also find us on Facebook at Official PAC Alliance, and then also there's one called PAC Alliance Study Group. I'm on Facebook, and my name's Levi Fishbone Charlton on Facebook. If you'd like to friend request me there, I'd be happy to answer questions one-on-one, and also, just kind of get involved with the community that we have there on Facebook. And we also have an open forum that can be found at pacgroups.us/forum. That's pacgroups.us/forum. And I always want to invite people to go over there because that's not censored by the Facebook police. And there's also a lot of other information on there. There's other tools that you can use there, such as legal dictionaries and other reference materials that will really help you to fully understand the information that's in the book, The Red Amendment. Because sometimes it can get pretty daunting to read a paragraph and you don't really fully understand some of the words that are being used. So it's really important to go to the reference materials, go back to that paragraph, and then read through again. And also we have a YouTube channel. The YouTube channel has all of the audio that we've been doing for part of last year and obviously this year, and we're going to be continuously adding new things to that channel, such as this call and other calls that have happened in the past, introductory calls. And also there are radio shows that are happening at freedomslips.com, Studio A. These radio shows happen from 6 p.m. until 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and that is hosted by L.B. Bork, the author of the Red Amendment, and also our good friend Frank, who's actually on the call with us tonight. He's just listening in. But they kind of go through and sort of tag team the information, and they can really go through. And again, it's on Tuesday. This call happens just directly after that. So again, that's freedomslips.com, Studio A. It happens from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern, and then this call picks up right at the end of that call or that show. The show is known as The Ultimate Remedy, and that's sort of a revival of a show that LB did years ago. So this basically concludes the presentation. So even if you're not in a position to change your status, you can assist those that are. You can volunteer your time to assist with different projects, and you'll just go to bed at night knowing that you're contributing to a better future for Americans. If you're ready to learn more, you can access the best information by getting a copy of the Red Amendment, like I said, and you can visit pacandlaw.us. You can visit Official PAC Alliance Group on Facebook. You can visit also PAC Study Group. People's, I think it's just called PAC Study Group.
It's called PAC Alliance. It's called PAC Alliance Study Group.
Okay, thank you. PAC Alliance Study Group, and then pacgroups.us/forum is how you can get onto the exclusive PAC forum that isn't censored by YouTube or by Facebook. And again, the best way to get this information is by getting a copy of the Red Amendment. So again, that concludes our presentation for the night. And if anybody has any questions, I'll invite you to press *2 on your touchtone phone. If you're on a phone, you can press *2 right now if you have any questions or comments. Again, that's *2. And if you're on the internet, then on the internet interface, you can press the 3 little white lines that are in the top right of the box that you're that represents your avatar, I guess. So if anybody has any questions or comments, again, you can press *2 on your phone. If not, then we can go ahead and wrap things up unless Frank or some of the other core members have anything that they would like to say.
I think you pretty much went over all of it.
Okay, great. Well, that was pretty quick presentation for tonight. I'll just go ahead and wrap it up now and say I hope everybody had a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and any other ways that you like to celebrate this time of year. I hope everybody had a really great time and got to eat a lot of great food and see a lot of family and friends. And on that note, I'll go ahead and say good night and God bless.
Thank you all for
Your line has been disconnected by the moderator.